Hoorah! What a great day to be an American. Coming in hot with the Major Ed Warrior for Freedom Heart of a Lion podcast, brought to you by First American Title.
Welcome to the Major Ed Pulido Warrior for Freedom Heart of a Lion podcast. Here is the man himself, Major Ed Pulido. Say hello.
Well, what a great day to be an American. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by First American Title. My good friends there doing housing, real estate, and commercial all over this great country, but here in the state of Oklahoma. And big shout out to them for all the love and
great
support.
Americans who are supporting Major Ed and the
That's
Major
right.
Ed podcast.
That's right. And so, you know what? It's a great day to be an American.
Every day is, but I love it when you say it.
Yeah, well, you know, it's my opening line.
Right.
I wake up that way every morning, and I say a prayer, but I also say, what a great day to be an American. And, you know, I'm humbled and honored to be on this podcast. Certainly have known you for a long time.
Right.
We have a history together through our United Way days, and how great it is that, you know, we've all grown up. And
Right.
I just love the fact that you've been in my corner. You understand where I come from.
Right.
As a warrior for freedom, but also understand that, you know what, we live in the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America, and we're all free to do what we love.
Absolutely.
And this is exactly what we're doing.
For sure. And my role in this podcast is to be the civilian.
Yes.
I'm someone who hasn't served in the military, but has utmost appreciation. Of course, every time I see you, what do I say? Thank you for your service, and I mean it
Yes.
every time. So anyone listening, if you're in the military or past military, you're going to understand and relate exactly what Ed's talking about, whether you saw action or not. If you're a civilian, but supporter of what the men and women in uniform do for us and the freedom that comes with it, or just a proud American, you're absolutely going to appreciate this podcast, and you're going to love hearing Major Ed's story. So let's get into who Major Ed Pulido is, how you're a warrior for freedom, and how the Heart of a Lion came about.
Well, great story. To start off, you know, my father once told me that when you take the oath of office to defend the greatest nation in the world, it's always been about God, country, family, and all of those that serve in the armed forces of the United States to basically take care of the American people. And serving in uniform, taking that oath of office was very important to me. And for me, it's a very powerful week because we're launching this podcast on August 17th of 2004 is when my life changed forever. On this Thursday, I'm going to be celebrating, along with the sports animal, by the way, I'm going to be celebrating my Alive Day. And my Alive Day really is the day that I came back from a tragic event, passed and died, you know, 3 times on the battlefield, but came back because God had purpose and God had a place for me to be. And that was to pay it forward to those that have sacrificed so much, but pay it forward to other people by the giving heart of who I am. And so my story really began, you know, when I was a young man at age 17, junior ROTC, Lawton MacArthur. That's where I went to high school for my high school years. And my dad was stationed down at Lawton Fort Sill. And it's interesting because I remember watching my dad put on his combat boots. I always knew that I wanted to join the United States Army and follow in his footsteps. And that's exactly what I did. Had a great career, peacetime, you know, the Desert Storm time frame as well. But then, you know, of course, my story truly begins, you know, after getting deployed to Iraq, you know, and being a part of Operation Enduring Freedom, which is Afghanistan, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. And,
Right.
you know, on August 17, 2004, my life changed forever.
In a very, very dramatic and split-second way.
Yes.
You were serving, you were doing your duty, you were in the Humvee with your guys, and you hit a roadside bomb, and an improvised explosive device.
Yes, and the explosive device, you know, first fragment hit my knee, broken in 3 places, fragments to the left side of my body. I mean, I was in trouble. But I want to say to all the enlisted and the non-commissioned officers, the backbone of our military, specifically a gentleman by the name of Aaron Sloan. I love Aaron, and, you know, he worked for me in periods of time during my military service. And it's individuals like him that I honor, because my dad always told me, you know, that you always honor the enlisted and the non-commissioned officers. They're the ones that you're going to lead. And knowing that I was an enlisted service member and then became an officer, I'm a green to golder is what they call them, that I knew what that all was all about. You know, in the Marines, they call them Mustangs. But for us, we're green to golders and knew everything about what we were doing. And as this fragments, riddled my body and I was in trouble, combat medic pulls me out of the vehicle, puts me on 128-degree pavement. And first thing that he says to me is, "Man, Major, you're hurt bad. Don't ever tell anybody like that during CPR process." But you know what? He saved my life. And to me, I honor and I'm grateful that young man took his training seriously. And that's what our military does. To all the military out there, thank you for your service and your continued sacrifice for this great nation, but understanding that, at the end of the day, we may go through a tragic time and a tragic event, but we all stand ready and we deliver and we understand that, we rehearse for situations of that magnitude.
So you're in the Humvee, you're on patrol with your team. This is happening, tragic event, but really the next thing you know is you're in Germany.
Yeah, and what happens to you is I went from the combat field environment, helicopter, 47 minutes after I'd been hit, was on the ground, man. I tell you what, it's clockwork. Everything that we rehearse for is that type of situation, Red smoke to identify somebody's down, white smoke to keep the enemy away, the insurgency specifically. There in Baku by Iraq, which was it was a hotbed for the insurgency. There were bombs being placed each and every day. Anybody that's been in that geographical zone knows it's in the past by Iran. Soleimani was one of those individuals working to bring these bomb-making materials, create chaos for our men and women, and on the battlefield. And it was we had casualties every day, and killed and wounded. So it was a very tough time in Iraq. It was right before the surge, and a lot of things go through your mind through this whole process, but we did everything right. I'm in a helicopter. I arrive in Baghdad, 17 hours in surgery. And then from there, you go from Baghdad, I got transferred over to Balad. And from Balad, I went over to the big combat hospital in Germany, man. And Landstuhl is just an awesome place. It's the hospital for that zone, but also for the combat zone at the time. And from there, I got transferred to Walter Reed and spent a little time there. And then Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, where I'd end up being in ICU, E. coli, Enterobacter, which Enterobacter's in the soil. They hadn't seen it since Nam. And then they were making these dirty bombs, Soleimani and those people, EXP, other things that they were doing. And it was just a dirty bomb that got me and caused infection. And I went from 195 to 118 pounds and faced death for the fourth time in my life.
Wow. So it's a struggle and a process, and you've had great support system from the military, from the doctors. Of course, your family was part of that as well, but it wasn't easy. You had a lot of hard times, a lot of dark times.
Well, yeah, and I got to say, a big shout out to Karen and my family and so many other people that were family, people in Oklahoma. Everybody asked me, "Why are you in Oklahoma?" I'm telling you, I love living in Oklahoma because of the fact that these people rolled out the red carpet when I came back. Being wounded in action, being one of the first amputees from the Iraq War, going through all these processes of living with a traumatic brain injury, and just the generosity and the love of the people here in Oklahoma and around the country, but specifically in Oklahoma, have really kind of given me that start that I needed back up. And, United Way, in fact, big shout out to my good friend Bob Spinks, him and Pam, right? Are getting, their big anniversaries coming up. And it was people like him at the United Way who, generously gave me my job, provided for me. That's where you and I met. How great it is that it all comes full circle. And you knew exactly what I was going through during that tragic time of what I call recovery. But you know what? You've never given up on me, and I've never quit on myself, and I'm never going to quit on my great country and its people. And that to me is what drives me every day.
Now, being a warrior for freedom means coming through this tragedy, these tragic events, those dark times, and not just surviving, but thriving and now helping others.
Yes. And I do that through the Heart of a Lion Foundation. Right. A big shout out to my good friends at Warriors for Freedom as well, because that foundation was one that I helped get started just to kind of provide that, we call the Remembering the 22, suicide prevention. Right. And then, of course, the work that I did at Folds of Honor with scholarships and the families of the fallen, wounded, and disabled, and Colonel Rooney and that whole group. the end of the day, I've had a blessed life, but Heart of a Lion was a little different. Heart of a Lion was something that I was praying about for a long time, and it just landed in my lap with our founder, John-Daly, and the great work that he's done in philanthropy. A lot of people don't give him credit for all of that. I mean, they just see this other stuff, but I see the giving heart that he has and how he wants to take care of people. 32 plus years with the Boys and Girls Club. The gifts of love that he gives to our veterans and first responders and just people in general that he comes in contact with. That's what I see. The John-Daly that you see on the golf course is the John-Daly that you will always see, the journeyman. Big shout out to my good friend Ken Duke, too, who's actually a PGA Tour Champions player as well. I have a lot of friends in that, BJ Singh and Ernie Els. There's a lot of them that are friends of mine. And the thing about all of them is that, they play on this tour. They know what it's all about. Bernard Langer, I've done some events with him as well. And they're just great people. They give back, and that's what John does too.
Right.
And that is what is the essence of the PGA Champions Tour, is to give back. And so I'm just so glad that I joined John. But our Heart of a Lion is John's lion, my Purple Heart, coming together, and we're the heartbeat of America.
There you go. And you have an authentic warrior for freedom, a person who not just served, but made great sacrifices in service of our country, now helping veterans, helping enlisted, helping family members as well, and whole communities, and combining with the openness to also help from the PGA Tours and Champions, John-Daly, etc., and combining all the best elements of philanthropy.
Well, we are, and the thing is that who taught us that was good old Bob Spinks and some other people over there.
Back in the United Way.
Back in the United Way days where, a guy named Frank Merrick, too, was a huge instrumental mentor for me, And the thing about it is that I remember a comment that Frank Merrick and Bob made when we were there at the United Way that really kind of changed the trajectory of my career. And, basically, we're the safety net of the communities that we serve.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember those words and their emphasis. And I remember the Community Services Council in Oklahoma City and how, then we took it to the United Way and how all of these organizations were incubated in what we did. People just that in general that really kind of came from that umbrella of really evolving into who they are today.
Right. And
how instrumental they are in starting small organizations, incubated them. And then, of course, they became powerful entities in our community that were not fledgling in the work that they were doing. They were actually making an impact. And to me, that is the essence of who we are, what we're all about. And I'm just grateful that I get to sit on this chair and tell you that story and tell the people that story, that's where I came from.
Right.
And that's where the giving heart lies.
And that's super important. I want to make an emphasis for anyone listening. Obviously, Major Ed's story is riveting and detailed and something a lot of people haven't gone through, but it's also the reason that the work that you're doing and the partners that you're bringing to you, whether it's through your book, through the foundation, through your speaking engagements, through this podcast, just meeting you in person, you have that authentic background. And this isn't something you do as a job. This is a calling. This is your life's work, because the veterans that you're helping, the people that you're supporting, you're one of them. You're one of those people who you've had people help you, and like you said earlier, you're paying it forward and bringing others along too to make paying that forward even more powerful. And that's why it's so important people understand your background and story as we then talk about what you're doing today through the foundation, through your efforts, through your community partners, etc.
Well, then I'll give you an example, because I do a lot of work, in various sectors, but we have a motto called Mission First, People Always, or Team Always. Right. And I kind of have changed it around. Look, it's a motto that's been around for a long time, but that's our motto that we emphasize. And we emphasize it with the mission at hand. What do we got to do to create, the infrastructure and the support to take care of people?
Right.
Whether it's homeless services, Monica Heights handles all of that as our executive director, to our golf programs and hunting and fishing, whatever it may be. Chick Linsky handles that. He's out of St. Louis, and it's a 3-man shop. And to me, it's that mission first. People always approach that. The mission at hand is we're going to take care of things that we have to take care of through our mission requirements. Right. But the people is the people that we're going to serve. And that to me was where Bob Spinks, Frank Merrick, people like you, Kit Lecter, I mean, all these folks that have just been in my corner that have been instrumental figures and just like being a part of my life, you know.
Right.
And I mention that because I know that, you know, with the Better Business Bureau, they're doing some great, outstanding work, you know, here in this state. And then now I'm working with the group called First American Title. We're trying to bring some infrastructure with we talked with the folks at Better Business Bureau about bringing realtors,
Right.
and connecting the First American Title family to all of that. And to me, First American Title, my good friend Marianne, who's basically the boss over there, she's so awesome. And Stephanie Holloway and so many others, my good friend April, all of these folks just have been embracing my work to try to make a difference. And that to me is the four pillars that I really truly represent, which is, you know, physical and mental health.
Right.
The second pillar that I represent is education, because I think education is important to every veteran and their family member. And then thirdly, you know, housing, and fourth, employment, and all these things wrapped around is what I call that approach to making people the best that they can be. And that is the inspiration behind my story, behind this podcast, and behind the mission of Mission First, People Always. We all have the heart of a lion.
Now, you mentioned inspiration. On this podcast, we're going to be reaching into a lot of those inspirations. We got a little bit of your story, and that's always going to be a part of what we're talking about. But we're going to talk about other people that we're working with in the community, that we're meeting and we're serving, that we're helping. Every aspect that comes around, all of the adventures you have in the world, trying to make sure that we're serving our veterans, serving our communities, and helping people in any way possible. For those of us who are doing well in the world, from John-Daly and the PGA pros down to you and I. So as we have each episode of this podcast, we're going to be hearing stories about people who needed help and received it, people who wanted to help other people and be beneficial, that private public partnership that you talked about here with America First Title, all of the ways that we can bring business and corporate and community and nonprofit and government and civic groups together and individuals to make the world a better place and to help the people that really need that help.
Well, yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I've learned about my work with First American Title in the last couple of months is how powerful, you know, commercial and housing and infrastructure to our local communities. And here in Oklahoma City, as you know, this is a national deal that I do. But where I live in Edmond and Oklahoma City, the infrastructure behind what we're doing with Mayor Holt and his vision for a new city, you know, a vibrant city.
Right.
The statistics that I heard at that event that I just went to, where the state of the city address and how powerful the numbers are of where we're at as a city, that, you know, all across this country I travel. And what I also want to do is just encourage people to take things back, to make your cities the best it can be, to make your communities, you know, thrive and be successful, to try to do what there's an organization called Possibilities and the work that they do in their local community to pick up trash and to change the trajectory of the community by asking its residents to take more ownership.
Right.
It's not just about parking your cars in the grass and maintaining an improper, you know, look for the home that you have, but taking pride in what you have. And I think that to me is I'm going to shoot it straight. And if you see something that doesn't look right, then you should be called out on it. And we should make our country the best it can be for its people. And to me, I'm seeing a lot of negativity, and all I want to do is project the negativity to positiveness and say, what can we do to build on to make our communities the best that they can be? And that's a new motto for the Army, by the way. Be the best you can be. The best you can be. That was an old motto that I used to.
Yeah, that goes back to what they used to do.
The old roots, like, be all you can be.
All
you know?
you can be.
And that to me is the essence of where, you know, what I project and where I come from, and why it's so important for me to work with groups like First American Title, and just say, you know, at the end of the day, we want to make our community the best.
And everyone can play their part in making our community the best in their community, whether you're an individual who has $10 extra, or you're a major celebrity who has $1 million extra, or a corporation that has $10 million extra that you could put towards something good, something beneficial, something that's helpful, something bigger than yourself, right?
Bigger than ourselves and bigger than the impact that we can make individually.
Right.
Because that's where I think Warrior for Freedom stands out. Look, I'm on one leg in that picture, but the reason that I'm one leg in the picture is that the prosthetic does work, but I need that other leg. I need that support from the American people. And that to me is how I've guided my life after this tragic event. And you know what? I'm not going to apologize for anything that I've sacrificed, because this country has been great to me. And that to me is again, not apologizing for the things that have happened in the past, but looking at what we can contribute to the present. And that to me is the way that it needs to be looked at. And historically, look, as an immigrant of this country, my father was Colombian, my mom was Puerto Rican. I understand the value of teamwork and the value of leadership and the value of community and love for country. And that's what I've learned through the faith that I've been given and the opportunity to practice that faith. And now I'm doing something purposeful, and that's to me the essence of being a great American.
So every time we make a podcast together, we're going to have these types of conversations. We're going to talk about those uplifting stories. We're going to talk about connecting people with the services and help and support that they need. We're going to tell people opportunities, again, that they can do if they have that $10 or $10 million, and inspire people to not make excuses, to not give up, to be motivated, to be inspired. Major Ed came through a terrible situation on the 128-degree pavement.
Yes.
And nearly died 4 times, and has now came back to be one of the most positive people that I know on this planet. And so I think we're going to let that rub off on people when they listen to this podcast about your positivity. I'm going to do my part to be positive.
I love it.
And we're going to bring these great stories, great opportunities, great inspiration, and motivate people to continue to do better for the individuals and the communities they live in.
Well, yeah, and I think that to me is what we can both agree on. We come from every background, and respect and dignity and love for one another, whether you are a religious person or not, whatever it highlights who you are and what you're all about, but not the negativity that goes along with it, and the hate and the division. The division.
Right.
Divisiveness can be so horribly bad, and I just think that everyone wonders why our media sometimes doesn't get a good shake, man. It's like, you know what? Just do your job and just report great things, and report the bad too. But at the end of the day, try to bring people together, because people are hurting out there. And that to me is what you're going to find from this podcast is you know what? If we can minimize hurt and hate and negativity and disrespect, and whether, again, if you have a religious belief, don't downgrade that religious belief. Right. If you don't like those people, if you don't like any of that stuff, then why be negative about it? Go on your merry way, because at the end of the day, we started this nation as a godly nation. And I think that, our faith drives us. And no matter what faith you have and what institution you want to practice that faith in, that you got a chance to do it because somebody like me sacrificed their leg and someone else sacrificed their life for you to have that freedom.
A lot of people have made those sacrifices
Correct.
Over the years for that.
Yes.
But at the same time, I know you, Ed. You're a fiery fella.
Yeah.
You have opinions on a lot of things. So there'll be times we'll be challenging things that are going on. We'll be calling out people, whether it's military leaders, political leaders, civic leaders, or just maybe individuals out there doing some dumb stuff in the world. I've heard you a few times.
Well, yes.
I've had you on my podcast. Yeah. You've called out some people who deserved it. So we'll be positive, but we'll call out things when it needs to be called out too, because that's part of the healing process.
Well, and we're not living in a fairy tale either. And the thing about it is that substance.
Yeah.
And I just recently was interacting with someone that, that was hurting. And the great thing about it is that at that particular moment, empathy and, and making sure that you have compassion. Right. And to me, look, whatever's happening in the current events, you can't sugarcoat that stuff. You got to bring it up, and you got to be neutral, but you also have to be balanced. And I think right now our nation is unbalanced. And I think that's what you're saying is, from a political standpoint, I think our nation has become very unbalanced because at the end of the day, the intentions of government are not in the best interest of its people.
Right.
And that to me is something that needs to be brought up.
Sure.
If you're not taking care of our people and we have issues on the border and people are coming over here and there's negativity behind that. And I always talk about a story with Bob Berry Jr. and what happened to him. And he was a good friend of mine and died too soon. And, an immigrant who came over and had been deported and all of that. If you don't tell those stories and you don't bring change to things, nothing changes. Yeah. And that to me is the essence of who we are on this podcast, is that we're going to bring up real life, real stories, and we're going to have solutions that work.
And that's the difference. By offering solutions, we're not just complaining, not just bitching and moaning, not just trying to tear people down.
That's right.
We're going to be building people up at the same time.
That's right. And building people up is what we should be doing, no matter where you come from, what you're doing, what you look like, who you want to be.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, you know what? We're all Americans together.
That's right.
And I've always said that, and that's what I say in my book. And you know what? That's what's going to be the driving force behind the Major Ed Heart of a Lion, Warrior for Freedom podcast, and brought to us by First American Title.
Right.
Please go visit them. Please go visit majored.org.
Yes.
Learn a little bit more
Great
about
website.
me. And jdme1991.org. We have a 1991 program that we're running right now. 1991. Sign up. Give $19.91 to the charitable cause that we've got and take care of first responders, veterans, children's causes, and certainly the elderly that are living in this great nation that we always, always must respect and honor and give hope to.
Guys, make sure you check out majored.org.
Yeah.
Majored.org and the John-Daly Major Ed Heart of a Lion Foundation.
jdme1991.org.
That's the website for that. Check that out as well.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about those things on every podcast. I can't wait to continue this series, have these conversations with you, the civilian and the veteran together. Right. Again,
coming in hot.
We're gonna bring you guys great stories, great insights, great ideas. We're bringing solutions, inspiration, motivation, everything that you get when you get to spend time with Major Ed. I'm going to make sure that this podcast, that anyone listening gets as much as the opportunity to hang out with Major Ed, because when I get to hang out with Major Ed, it makes me feel like a great American.
Well, we're looking for corporate partners too. So if you're a corporate partner, want to join and get a little love from our podcast here, and it's about, like you said, creating solutions, creating change, and creating impact. And to me, that's what we're all about, and that's why we're faithful to what we do.
Any support we get, we're going to pass it on to the people who need our help and services, who need that inspiration, that need that motivation. We're going to pay it all forward.
That's right. Paying it forward is what it's all about. So
thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Of course, it's your podcast, Major Ed, but thank you so much for allowing me to be your co-host. I'm looking forward to the next episode and the next episode and the next episode. Thank you, sir.
But thank you so much. And big salute to everyone out there. And on behalf of all of our veterans and first responders, the Major Ed Warrior for Freedom Heart of a Lion podcast, brought to you by First American Title. We're here to make a difference because it's about mission first, people always, and making sure that we take care of our community. God bless the United States of America. Hoorah!